Welcome, everybody, to today's safety roundtable. And it's a really exciting day for me because we're here to talk about something that I have been working on for a long time, which is my book, which is being officially released today. Now, the that's the good news. The bad news is that as of the uh, recording of this or the broadcasting of this, which is happening live and in color, Amazon hasn't yet fully released the book onto Kindle. So, for those of you waiting with bated breath to buy the book right now, I'm going to keep checking as we do this. I was expecting it to be up this morning, but it hasn't released yet. So that's a bit frustrating. Um, but the good news is we can still have a great session today and run through what I wanted to do about the book. And as soon as it's available, I will let you guys be the first to know, particularly the people that have attended this session live. So thank you for coming. What I thought we would do is why is it not showing me? It should be showing me. Uh, let's just do this. What I thought we would do is I'm just going to run quickly through what I'm planning to talk about today, and then we'll get into it. And there's going to be at the end a special offer for everybody that joins today's session to get a free copy of the book. By that I mean a free copy of the physical paperback book once that's launched. So do stay with me until the end, and I will be sharing about that. So what I'm going to cover today is firstly why I wrote the book. Secondly, run through some of the key ideas that are discussed in the book and try to shift some perspectives that people might have around what you can do to prevent slips, or even if you can prevent slips from happening in the first place. I'm going to read out 4 of the chapters of the book as a little taster. I'm going to run through how you can get a free copy of the book, and at the end I'm going to do a Q&A session as well. So if you have any questions, then I would love for you to ask me them at the end. You can type them in the chat as we go as well, but yeah, do stay tuned and we will go through some questions at the end. So why did I write this book? It's something that I've been working on for, gosh, probably 3 or 4 years now. I think I first started speaking about it when I was talking to insurance companies during COVID. I had a lot of time in COVID, and I had time to think, and I decided that it would be a good idea to write a book. But it's taken a long time to get from there to here, and that's because life gets in the way, and lots of things have been happening in the meantime. But just going back to why I think it's a good idea to do a book on this topic. The first reason is, and if you've never heard me speak about this, then I'll just cover quickly what happened to me. But I developed a very, very keen passion for safety in 2012. And the long story short is that on a Sunday afternoon in May of 2012, I was walking along the pavement with my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, and a car sped around a corner, lost control, mounted the curb, and ran me over. And this was a photograph of me later that afternoon or that evening in hospital. You can see it's from a few years ago because the dark hair in my beard and and on top of my head, which nowadays is a bit more grey. And when something like that happens to you, and I always say this was a very pivotal point in my life, but I was very lucky to not be more seriously hurt, but equally, of course, very unlucky that it did happen in the first place. But when something like that happens to you, you do as you'd expect, develop a keen interest in safety. So that's what got me really interested in safety and passionate about safety. And when I started looking into safety, my training was as a management consultant, so very data led, looking at markets, trends, businesses, sectors, industries, etc. And I started um, looking at what was going on in safety. Instinctively, you might think, okay, let's go into road safety because you had a road traffic accident. But actually, the data in that space was quite positive. It was telling quite a good story. But as I started to look into this, what I found was that there was this big category called slips, trips, and falls. And not only was this the largest cause of accident, injury, and claim, but it was very, very flat. In other words, our performance hadn't been improving. And actually, this is the last 10 years data or a recent 10 years of data. And you can see there, it continues to be very, very flat. So it's the biggest category of risk. And it's also an area that at the time and still wasn't being solved effectively enough. In other words, we weren't seeing an improvement. Once I started drilling further into this, I discovered that of this bigger category of slips, trips, and falls, the vast majority is slips. And then that got me down this road of understanding the science and digging deep into this subject. And that's kind of what I cover in the book. But that is why I work in the field of slips. And why have I written the book? Well, because this is a problem that needs to be solved, in my opinion. So if you put together kind of my origin of the backstory as to why I became passionate about safety, that's kind of where I started. The journey that I'm going on is one where I foresee a future where safety is taken more seriously and it's dealt with in a more scientific way. And specifically in this area, I want us to aim for seeing a reduction in slip accidents of 500,000 a year around the world. So that's the kind of vision that I have. And I believe that that's an achievable vision because of the experiences that I've had. But that's not something that I can do on my own. I can't physically stop 500,000 people from slipping and falling around the world each year just on my own. And so I need people to join me on this journey, which I believe is a game worth playing. And so if we start from my origin, we think about that's my big vision for where I believe we can get to and I want us to get to. What can I do to support that? And that's really where the book comes in, because I believe that by sharing the science of how to prevent slips, by giving the frameworks and the methodologies that I do in the book, this will empower you who are joining me on this to go out and actually deliver some of the improvements that are needed for us to get to this bigger goal. So I suppose the mission that I'm on at the moment with the book is to raise awareness, educate, and empower more people to deal with slips more scientifically and therefore to build us up towards that big impact. So let's go into a few key ideas that we talk about in the book. The first one is that there are some big misconceptions around slips. And I've kind of coined this phrase of the slip problem to discuss this. So people think that slips are simple. That's partly because we bundle them up with trips, which actually are pretty simple to solve, but people think that slips are simple. They think that slips are low cost, and there are lots of examples in the book of where slips actually have become very, very expensive indeed, both from a human cost perspective, a financial cost perspective, but of course, a reputational perspective as well. People feel as if slips are impossible to solve. In other words, if a floor is slippery, if it's wet, sorry, it's bound to be slippery, or we just can't do anything about this. And then they think that slips are paltry, insignificant. Yeah, lots of people fall over, they slip and fall over, but nobody seriously gets hurt. Doesn't really matter. And if you put those four misconceptions together, then it's pretty understandable why we don't see much progress. If we're thinking these four things, and hopefully you joining me today are not thinking these four things, but if we, as in the world, are thinking these four things about this problem, then it kind of makes sense, doesn't it, that these are a big chunk of accidents, injuries, and claims, and that this is a problem that's flatlining because we're not really setting our minds to solving this problem as well as we might do. Therefore, we end up with a situation where everyone is doing something about preventing slips. I've never been into a business where they have no policy, procedure, risk assessment, etc., about preventing slips. But what we end up with is this situation where the actions that we're taking and the mindset that we hold are superficial, shallow. So we're playing in this space which is mile wide and inch deep. And what we're not doing is attacking this problem with a mindset of inch wide, mile deep. So in other words, going deeper, being more focused, really getting down to those root causes, really looking at the key factors that cause slips. And until we do that, until we take this more scientific and in-depth approach, in my experience, we're never going to solve this problem. So what do we need to do? In the book, I speak about what I call the 5-step Slipology method. And there are 5 key phases that we have to go through. And they come under the banner of 5 A's to try and make them memorable. So we have assess, amend, advocate, assure, and affirm. And it's kind of like a pyramid, as if you're watching this on the screen, you can see in the good old yellow sign. We're going from the foundational aspect of assess, which is all about understanding, measuring, quantifying, really diagnosing where our slip risks lie, and figuring out those foundational aspects. Unless we do that well, we can't do the next step, which is amend, which is all about making those improvements. So what do we need to do? Where should we focus our time and effort? What should we prioritize? How should we be sure that the changes that we're making are actually effective? That's about driving down this risk. The next step is advocate, and this is all about getting buy-in. And I'm going to read a chapter of the book in a minute where I've seen this a few times before. People sometimes get caught up in trying to achieve a safety culture before they've done the kind of more engineering controls perspective things that I believe we need to do, and my experience is we need to do first. But once we've got those in place, that's the time, in my opinion, to start focusing in on culture, getting buy-in from everybody that touches the business internally at all levels and across all aspects of the business. Externally, key stakeholders from suppliers, insurers, and everyone in between. Assure, the 4th step, is all about maintaining these new standards that we've set. So what do we need to do to keep on top of this? Because it's quite easy to make improvements that then don't stick. So we've got to make sure that these things stick. So how do we do that? When do we do that? Where do we need to focus our time and effort, etc.? And then the 5th step is affirm. So this is all about evidencing what we've done. And there are multiple reasons we should do that. But one of them is simply this. If we think about preventing slip accidents, there are 2, I suppose, key outcomes that we can achieve. One of them is kind of upstream and one of them is downstream. So the first thing we can do is we can have a dramatic effect on the risk and therefore the number of incidents and injuries that are happening. So if we can stop something from happening in the first place, we can prevent an accident from occurring, then obviously that's a great result. The second thing that we want to be able to do, understanding that, and again, I'm going to speak about this in a minute with another chapter, perfection's not possible. We're never going to consistently, predictably be able to eliminate these incidents. We want to be in a position where we can defend ourselves. So even if someone does slip, even if it was a legitimate injury that they sustained, we should still be able to defend ourselves in a civil claim um, perspective and prevent any kind of criminal uh, prosecution activity as well. We also need evidence to enable us to win business, to get insurance, to navigate through our supply chain, and all sorts of other reasons as well. So these are the 5 steps that the book speaks to. And there's a chapter and a section on each of these, going into a lot of detail, as you'd expect in the book. Now, another key idea, and this runs through all of the 5 A's, is a concept that I call chimes. So basically, these are the 6 reasons that somebody might slip. And again, we delve into in detail these 6 areas in the book. We speak about what can we measure, why should we measure, how frequently should we measure, how exactly can we do this measurement, and what are the benefits of measuring in each of these areas. So chimes runs through throughout the book as a kind of motif or a theme. But fundamentally, these are the 6 key reasons why somebody might slip. So the first is contamination. So if we've got something on the floor, it's going to be, or it could be, more slippery than if the floor is perfectly clean and dry. So what contamination do we have? How can we mitigate that from building up? How much of it can we withstand, etc., etc. Heel is the next one, which is all about footwear. Now, there are some misconceptions even within footwear that, for example, a safety shoe is slip resistant. Just because you've got a safety shoe doesn't necessarily mean that the shoe is slip resistant. But equally, if we're managing buildings where we have members of the public, we can't necessarily control their footwear anyway. But what do we need to do about footwear? What can we do to control it? All falls under this heading of heel. Next is individual. So this is all about the human factors. So gender and age play a role here. If you're an elderly woman, an 80-year-old woman, let's say, you're more likely to slip and fall and to be seriously hurt than if you're a 20-year-old man, for example. But the key thing here is all about activities. So if you're pushing, pulling, twisting, turning, if you're carrying stuff, if you're rushing, if you're distracted, all of these things can increase the chance of somebody slipping. So we need to be able to understand which of these activities are happening and what we can do to mitigate that risk. And is maintenance. This splits into 3: change of use, wear and tear, because things do change over time, and cleaning. E is environment, so that's the weather, things like condensation, but it's also the built environment, entrance matting, steps and stairs, ramps and slopes, lighting, noise, things like that. And then S is surface, which is the floor itself. So these are the 6 key areas where, when I go into an organization and they're doing well, they tend to be doing well across the 6. When I go in and they're struggling and we start to look into this and delve into the detail, it tends to be the case that they're perhaps only looking at 1 or 2 of these areas, and even then, not in that much detail. Another key idea in the book is that Slipology, if you implement it properly, will have a ripple effect. And what that means is that there are some really quick win benefits, there are some medium-term benefits, and there are some longer-term benefits. But these are not just for your organization. We can understand that if we can mitigate risk, there's a benefit to the organization. But actually, what we should think here is both a bit more micro and a bit more macro, because there are benefits for you as a safety professional or a facilities professional or a risk professional, for you personally in dealing with this problem in a slightly more effective way. And there are absolutely some key benefits to society as well. I'm a firm believer in the UN global goals, and there are 17 goals that have been set by the UN. And they're effectively the problems that, if we were able to work together and solve them, they would deliver a better world for everyone. And if you start to look at those goals quite carefully and you consider them, actually the delivery mechanism of those goals is driven by a feeling of safety. It's driven by the implementation of controls and methods to make organizations more productive, to have higher performance, and actually linking what we do in terms of slip prevention to this bigger goal that we should all be going on as a world, I believe is really helpful because it gives us more perspective. It's not about um, stopping ineffective use of yellow signs. It's actually about what can we do to get high performance in our organization, which enables our organization to make more profit and then to be doing some charitable and socioeconomic good in the world. And that ties into something else that I really believe in, which is a concept I call profit from safety. And I speak about this in the Prevent Slip Accidents with Slipology book. But I've actually already got in mind to write a second book, which is going to be called Profit from Safety. The key idea here is that safety is not a cost. Safety is a driver of profitability for an organization. So safety affords a level of protection that can drive performance, which can drive profit and purpose. And therefore, we need to start looking at safety as an investment and something that will enhance our organizations and not as something that is a cost and a pain in the bum and something that we should be trying to avoid. Now, I'm sure if you're joining me on this session, you won't believe those things about safety, but that is something that we, as a group, have to try to overcome because it is something that people do perceive about safety. I was delighted to get a couple of high-profile people to have a little pre-read of the book. And Rosie, who's co-president of IIRSM, and Malcolm, who's the Global VP of Health and Safety at L'Oreal, both gave some very kind quotes about the book. So you can check those out on the screen if you're watching along. I'm not going to read them out, but it was very, very kind of them to do that. And I was really pleased to get that. And hopefully, as and when you're able to read the book as well, you might have some similar feelings. Josh, thank you on LinkedIn for the congratulatory message, and Vedat as well. Thank you for following us along on LinkedIn. So we're getting some praise, even though the book hasn't officially been released. So what I thought we'd do now is I thought I'd read 4 quick chapters out to you, and these chapters are all in the section of the book which is all about reframing slip safety, so getting us to think slightly differently about this problem. So if you'll permit me, I will give the chapters a read in the order that they appear in the book. So the first chapter is called Don't Use Safety Culture as an Excuse for Inaction. Safety culture comes after, not before, robust controls. A few years ago, I presented for the IOSH Logistics and Retail Group at their annual conference, discussing slip safety and what can be done to control risk. Afterwards, several people came up to me to ask for help to get started on their own scientific slip prevention journey. But one person was different. He was in charge of safety for a large retailer. They had smooth floors. They had only limited entrance matting. They suffered from slips. His response to my talk, though, was different to the others. We're just not ready for all this technical stuff yet, he said. We need to work on our safety culture first. This, to me, was a red flag mistake. Fostering a safety culture is undoubtedly important within any organization. It encompasses the attitudes, perceptions, and values that employees share concerning safety. However, prioritizing culture over concrete safety measures is, in my view, putting the cart before the horse. Think about this. Even if we encourage our staff to be careful and aware, real safety starts with the physical environment. The surroundings are what really determine how safe an area is. Without tackling actual dangers, any attempt to build a culture of safety is on uncertain footing. Consider the example of this large retailer with their shiny, stylish floors. They look great, but incredibly slippery, increasing the risk of falls. Not having enough mats at the entrance only makes things worse, turning it into a question of when accidents will happen, not if. Trying to foster a safety culture without putting proper physical measures in place is like teaching people to swim in dangerous waters without providing lifebuoys. A safety culture shouldn't be used as a reason to put off bringing in strong safety measures. It should go hand in hand with these actions. At the top of the list for safety measures are removing or replacing hazards. Get rid of the danger and the risk disappears. When we talk about preventing slips, dealing with physical issues like the type of flooring, the quality of mats, and having a good cleaning practices is our way of removing or replacing hazards. Putting money into these physical safety measures also shows a clear commitment to safety, sending a strong message to staff that their welfare is important to the organisation. This helps a true safety culture to grow, one that's based on real actions, not just wishes. When employees see actual changes in their workplace, they're more likely to believe in and support the safety culture. They'll understand that safety isn't just a policy, it's a real living standard at their work. It's vital then to address the physical controls as a priority. The retailer's smooth floors demand attention. The limited entrance matting needs expansion. Measures such as these are not mere technical details, they're the bedrock of a safe environment. Only once these controls are in place can a safety culture truly flourish, because it's not just about feeling safe, it's about being safe. In working towards safety, it's crucial to understand that real culture change happens when people see their organization's solid commitment to safety. A strong safety culture is built on trust, and trust comes from seeing actions taken, not just hearing promises. Putting off practical safety steps to focus on culture efforts can actually hold back real change. So, while it's important to encourage a mindset of safety, we must remember our primary responsibility is to make the environment safe. Only with a secure environment can a culture of safety truly flourish, not as a cover-up, but as a key part of a comprehensive approach to safety at work. Culture follows actions, it doesn't precede them. The next chapter I wanted to read is called Swiss Cheese or Penne Pasta. Are your slip safety defences as robust as you thought? You are what you eat. If you spent any time in the world of safety management, you've likely encountered the concept of the Swiss cheese model more times than you've had hot dinners. For the uninitiated, picture a stack of Swiss cheese slices. Each slice represents a layer of defense against accidents. The holes, they're the weaknesses in each layer. The idea is that while one layer might have a hole, the next layer catches the slip up, pun absolutely intended, preventing a full-blown accident. Now, in theory, this model should work splendidly for slip safety. Imagine a slice for proper flooring, another for effective cleaning protocols, yet another for staff training, and so on. Each layer doing its part to catch potential slip hazards before they turn into bruised bottoms, broken wrists, or worse. Sounds great, doesn't it? A veritable fondue of safety measures, all working together to keep everyone on their feet. But here's the rub. In my years of experience, I've found that many organizations' slip safety defenses are about as robust as a chocolate teapot. When you start to look at this in more depth, you'll recognize that you might not have a Swiss cheese, you may well have something more like a piece of penne pasta. Unlike the solid layers of Swiss cheese with occasional holes, penne pasta is fundamentally, well, holy. It's designed that way, and unfortunately, so are many slip safety strategies. In a proper Swiss cheese model of slip safety, we'd see multiple overlapping layers of protection. Each layer would be comprehensive, covering as much ground as possible, with only small, unavoidable gaps. But too often, what we actually see in practice are scattered, disconnected measures full of gaping holes. Bear this in mind as we journey through the book, and it will illuminate your thinking. inspire you to improve, and keep you grounded on tangible, measurable improvements. It is possible to create a robust Swiss cheese defence, but only if you're open to questioning how solid your current defences are. This means taking a hard look at every factor that contributes to slip risks in your environment. It's not just about the floor surface, or just about cleaning practices, or just about footwear. It's about all these things working together in a coordinated system of safety. The goal isn't perfection. Even the Swiss cheese model acknowledges that some holes will always exist, but we can certainly do better than the colander-like defense that penne pasta provides. So, I challenge you to take a good, hard look at your slip safety strategy. Are you serving up a solid platter of Swiss safety, or are you offering a bowl of penne and hoping for the best? It's time to beef up those defenses layer by layer until you've got a safety strategy that's as robust as a well-aged Emmental. In the world of slip safety, it's better to be cheesy than full of holes. So let's get grating, shall we? The next chapter is called Don't Be a Safety Crab, Breaking Free from the Safety Plateau. Feeling crabby that your accident statistics are moving sideways? If not, why not? Imagine a crab at the beach. It's unique for many reasons, but one thing that always stands out is its peculiar way of moving. It scuttles sideways. It may cover lots of ground, but it never truly goes forward. Now, what does this have to do with safety? In safety, particularly slip safety, we encounter what I like to call the safety crab phenomenon. Organizations track various safety metrics and see a lot of sideways movement, small fluctuations, but no significant forward progress. In this chapter, I challenge you to avoid becoming a safety crab and to aim for consistent forward progress in your slip safety strategies. Safety crabs are often characterized by static safety metrics. They take comfort in safety metrics that show sideways movement. While it may seem that they aren't getting worse, they're not getting significantly better either. Acceptance of the status quo. They tend to accept the status quo and resist change. They're satisfied with minor fluctuations in safety metrics and don't strive for continuous improvement. Low risk appetite. They're often reluctant to take calculated risks that could lead to significant safety improvements, such as investing in new technologies or changing long-standing processes. So how do we avoid being a safety crab? Here are some steps to take. Set clear, forward-looking goals. Set goals that challenge your organization to improve. Adopt a continuous improvement mindset. Safety is not a destination, it's a journey. Strive for continuous improvement. Learn from incidents and near misses and incorporate these lessons into your safety strategies. Embrace innovation. Don't shy away from adopting innovative safety practices or technologies. These could make the difference between sideways movement and forward progress. Use leading indicators. Shift your focus from lagging indicators, accident rates, to leading indicators, near misses, safety training participation rates, safety audits. These can provide early warnings of potential issues and give you a chance to take proactive measures. Engage your people. Safety isn't solely the responsibility of the safety department, it's a collective responsibility. Engage your employees in safety initiatives, fostering a safety culture that drives everyone to play their part. In conclusion, remember this: a safety crab moves a lot, but doesn't make meaningful forward progress. It's a trap you don't want to fall into. Let's aim for progress, not just motion. In Slips and Falls, we've almost created a consortium of safety crabs. Did you know that a group of crabs is a consortium? I didn't. We seem to have accepted that year after year, slips will be something like 28% of riddles, 35% of insurance claims, and £1.5 billion or so of costs. It doesn't have to be that way. Let's move from a consortium of crabs to a flock of peregrine falcons. As the fastest diving birds, their accident statistics are where we want to be aiming. And the last chapter I wanted to read today is called Goldilocks and the Three Slips. Just right is the quote from Goldilocks. As we wrap up part one of our slipology journey, it's time to address a crucial concept that will guide your slip safety efforts, the Goldilocks principle. Just as the famous fairy tale character sought perfect balance in her porridge, chair, and bed, we too must find the sweet spot in our approach to slip prevention. Let's be crystal clear from the outset. Perfection in slip safety is a myth. If you're aiming for a world where not a single person ever loses their footing, I'm afraid you're setting yourself up for disappointment. The laws of physics, human nature, and the sheer complexity of our environments make such a goal unrealistic. But here's the good news: perfection isn't necessary to make a massive, life-changing difference. After all, the kinds of results that I've already shared with you, 50% reductions in accidents, injuries, and claims, are huge. This kind of improvement will massively impact your organization, as well as keeping loads more people safer. Win-win. Think of slip safety like a thermostat, not an on-off switch. Our goal isn't to eliminate all slip risks, too cold, or to create an environment so restrictive it hampers productivity and enjoyment, too hot. We're aiming for that just right temperature, where safety and practicality coexist harmoniously. So, what does just right look like in the world of slipology? Based on my experience working with thousands of sites across diverse industries, we typically see a reduction in slip incidents of around 57% or more when slipology principles are properly implemented. That's our Goldilocks zone. Now, you might be thinking, only 57%? Surely we should be aiming higher. And I understand that impulse, but let's break this down. A 57% reduction is massive. Imagine cutting your slip incidents by more than half. That's not just a statistic, it's potentially hundreds of injuries prevented, thousands of work hours saved, and a significant boost to your bottom line. Second, this level of improvement is achievable and sustainable. It's a realistic goal that organizations can work towards without becoming overwhelmed or disheartened. And third, the law of diminishing returns kicks in beyond this point. The effort and resources required to push beyond this level often outweigh the additional benefits. Remember, we're talking about the minimum effective output here. It's about getting the maximum bang for your buck, so to speak. By focusing on achieving this just right level of improvement, you're ensuring that your slip safety efforts are both impactful and efficient. Let's consider a practical example. Imagine you're managing a busy shopping centre. Currently, you're averaging 100 reported slip incidents per year. By implementing the slipology principles, you could potentially reduce this to around 43 incidents per year. That's 57 fewer injuries, 57 fewer potential lawsuits, and 57 more satisfied customers. Not too shabby, huh? But here's where the Goldilocks principle really comes into play. To achieve this 57% reduction, you might need to invest in better flooring in high-risk areas, improve your cleaning protocols, and train your staff in slip prevention techniques. These are significant, but manageable changes. To push for a 90% reduction, however, you might need to completely overhaul every floor surface, hire a dedicated slip prevention team, and implement such stringent protocols that it hampers the shopping experience. Suddenly, you veered into the too hot territory, where the costs and inconveniences outweigh the additional safety benefits. The key is to find that just right balance, where you're making a significant impact on safety without creating undue burden or unsustainable practices. It's about being pragmatic, not perfectionist. This approach also aligns with the legal concept of reasonably practicable that underpins much of health and safety law. You're not expected to do everything possible to prevent slips, regardless of cost or practicality. You're expected to do what's reasonably practicable to manage the risk. The challenge, being brutally honest with you, is that, sadly, most organizations are currently in the space of nowhere near enough. So there is work to do. There are mindsets to be shifted, and there is investment to make to get us to just enough. As you move forward in your Slipology journey, keep this Goldilocks principle in mind. Strive for meaningful improvement, not unattainable perfection. Celebrate the wins, learn from the setbacks, and always keep pushing towards that just right level of slip safety. Remember, a 57% reduction in slip incidents isn't just a number, it's a transformation. It's safer environments, healthier workers, satisfied customers, and a more robust bottom line. It's peace of mind, knowing you're doing the right thing by your people and your business. So, as we close this chapter and part one of our book, I challenge you to embrace your inner Goldilocks. Seek out that just right approach to slip safety. It's not about being too cautious or too lax. It's about finding that sweet spot where safety and practicality meet. In the parts to come, we'll delve deeper into the how-to of achieving this Goldilocks state of slip safety. But for now, take a moment to reflect on what just right might look like in your organization. Because when it comes to Slipology, sometimes good enough is not just good enough, it's transformative. So there's a little preview of 4 chapters of the book. Hopefully you found that interesting, and you can read the rest as and when you get your copy. So here's an offer for you. Thank you very much for joining this session, and do send me your questions, or feel free to come and unmute and ask me some questions in a minute. But here's the offer for you. So the Kindle version of the book should be out now. It may well be out now, but if not, it'll be out sometime today, or certainly imminently within the next coming hours, depending on when Amazon manages to just press that button. Excuse me. So if you buy the Kindle version, which is only going to be £1.49 for the rest of this month, and if you then post about the book on social media to spread the word and encourage more people to get involved in the science of slip prevention and the Slipology principles. And then the third thing you do is you complete your details on this link below. And the link is scorecard.slipsafety.co.uk/free book. You fill in your details there. And sadly, this is only for people in the UK. But if you take those 3 steps, then when the physical paperback version of the book is ready, which we're expecting to be in a couple of weeks from now, then we will send you a paperback copy for free for having taken those 3 steps. So buy the Kindle version, post about it, post about the book on social media, fill your details in on the website scorecard.slipsafety.co.uk/free book, and keep your eyes peeled on the post, and you'll get a paperback copy winging its way to you as soon as they are ready. So now's the time. Happy to take some questions. If you're on the Zoom, if you want to ask a question by unmuting, then you can go to reactions, raise your hand, and I'll call you up. But if not, then I will have a look at some of the questions in the chat. How can we get the book? It was the first question that someone asked. The book I'm going to share in a second, but it's going to be on Amazon. It's going to be available on to buy on Kindle initially, and then the paperback will be released in due course. Richard, you were first to put your hand up on Zoom. Would you like to unmute and ask a question?
Yeah, sorry, I was just battling to unmute. Okay,
That's all right.
One of the things that I've come across quite frequently, in fact, shoelaces play a big role in, making sure that your ankle is secure, and of course, fastening your shoelaces correctly. And it also has led to quite a few trips and slips and things like that. What's your advice on that in terms of correctly? Look, I mean, there's different methodology, different ways of tying your shoelace. I mean, you learned that literally when you were kind of 3 years old. But I mean, you see it often. People just walking around on, very dangerous sites with shoelaces loose. That is a big issue. I think.
Fully agree, and thank you for joining, and thank you for the question. I've got a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old, and I often see untied shoelaces. I can assure you of that. So, and I'm always telling them to do them up for that reason. So, when it comes to the risk, obviously there's a potential trip risk of having shoelaces untied, but it is going to contribute to slip risk as well, because as you identified right at the start of your question, if your footwear isn't secured properly, then you're not going to have as much support as you might need, and therefore you're going to be more likely to lose your balance. So, what could be a slight slip, which you then recover because you've got good balance, may well, if you've got your shoelaces undone and therefore you've lost that support, turn into a slip that you try to recover from and you don't, and you fall and you hurt yourself. So I would absolutely encourage, particularly in those high risk environments like construction and places like that, that we need to be making sure that this is done. Can we be thinking about better designs of how we can clasp our footwear together? I'm sure that's a question for somebody with much more interest in footwear design than me, but that would be something that probably is worth thinking about. But absolutely would encourage people to do that, and it definitely plays a big role. Thanks again for the question.
Thank
Um,
you.
Viren, do you want to unmute and ask your question?
Yeah, hi, Christian. Hope all is well. Finally able to join this session after quite a few weeks. Um, but yeah, wonderful hearing your insights once again, and congratulations on the book.
Thank you.
Um, just a question real quick. I guess it comes down to the topic of slips, trips, and falls. But how effective or ineffective are anti-slip mats? I'm
Yeah.
sure anti-slip mats are probably used more in the home scenario, but do you foresee or have you heard about any anti-slip mats being used in commercial places, basically non-homes, be it offices, meeting rooms, I don't know, hospitals, hotels? Like, do you
Yeah.
do you see that, or have you heard about those being used? And if yes, are those effective or non-effective?
Thanks. Glad to have you with us, and thank you for joining and for the question. Firstly, Viren. So yeah, those are absolutely used, significantly in commercial settings as well. These temporary mats. So the ideal situation around matting is that if we're speaking about an entrance to a building, that you'd have fixed matting, so built-in matting, which would be big enough in terms of its depth and made of the right kind of material and well maintained enough so that it would be effective. And the idea of matting is to remove contamination, so that by the time you're stepping on the floor beyond that matting, your feet are dry and therefore you're reducing that slip risk. The secondary benefit is it stops the dirt and contamination getting inside the building from a kind of aesthetic perspective as well. What lots of people do is they often don't have enough built-in matting, and they think that the solution is these temporary loose lay mats. And those can be a temporary solution, but they're not a long-term solution. So just like if you're putting a yellow sign out all the time, if you're having to put temporary mats out, that to me is a symptom that you've got a larger problem and something that you need to address with some more robust engineering controls. Some of the challenges of the matting, that this kind of loose lay temporary matting, are that it can move. So it can, you can lay it in one place and it might move through use over time. It can sometimes end up with the corners coming up and producing a trip hazard. If it's not changed in and out enough, the mat can get sodden and therefore it doesn't actually do what it's supposed to do. And the other big challenge, of course, is that when you're coming through a door, um, and there's a single line of matting, which is what you normally see. You don't have to walk on that line. People often veer away in different directions, and therefore the matting isn't kind of doing what it's supposed to do. So those are some of the downsides. Obviously, there are benefits to it, and I wouldn't say never use it. But I would say that you should consider it as a temporary measure only, a sort of sticking plaster in the short term, shall we say? But then you should look at some more robust control measures for the longer term. Tamara, you've got your hand up. Do you want to unmute and ask a question?
Yeah, it's something I've wondered for a while. It's not directly related to your book, but it's probably the reason you wrote your book. How and why is slips and all that so important to you that you've made it essentially not just your career, but your passion?
It's a great question. So I kind of alluded to some of that hopefully earlier in terms of what made me really interested in safety, in terms of my accident. Um, but I suppose it was kind of maybe it's only me that could have got to this point because I had that incident that happened to me, and then I had this kind of training of consulting and looking at sort of marketplaces and trying to figure out what's going on and why. And perhaps it's just that unique perspective of those two bits of history for me that meant that I was able to see this and really um, zone in on it when other people perhaps wouldn't. Um, I suppose the other thing I'd say is that the benefit I've got, which other people haven't got, is that I have been focusing on this for so long, and I've seen that it is possible to do things much better. And I never like to criticize. I never try to criticize anybody on where they're currently at in their organization at solving this problem because most people are doing something. Pretty much everyone's doing something. They're trying. Um, their background, their experiences have led them to that point where they're doing that. My background, my experiences have led me to a point where I'm in a different place on this area. Whereas in other areas of safety, I haven't got a clue, and they would know much, much more than me. So it's not about criticizing; it's about trying to help, and it's having that perspective to say, look, this is important, but also there are things we can do about it. And I guess the other thing I would say is that um, the other perspective I bring is from the kind of insurance and risk management world because my business partners with insurers. Often they even pay for us to kind of come in and help clients to reduce risk. And when you start to look at the money and follow the flow of money, again, some of my consulting training, and you get up to these insurance companies, they're spending so much money on this. Um, it's wrong. It's costing money, and we're spending money on stuff that we shouldn't have to spend on. So I think those three areas, I suppose, would be how I'd answer that question. Hopefully, that's you're nodding, so hopefully that answered the question. Anyway, if anyone else wants to unmute and ask a question, feel free. I've got a couple here in the same if you're following on LinkedIn or anywhere else. So Mustafa asked. Many would love to write about their experiences. What was the most difficult part to write? To some extent, the most difficult bit to write is it's not so much the portion of the text to write, but it's trying to strike that balance that I try to just speak about where you don't want to be critical. Because I'm absolutely not wanting to be critical here. I'm trying to be helpful. And so walking that tightrope between trying to say, look, you know, you may not be doing this as well as you think you are right now, but there is a way you can improve, and here's how to do it. Is something difficult. So I think getting the tone and the right was probably the most challenging bit. Thanks, Jason, for the comments. Question from Stuart. In terms of HSE, who does the liability lie with, the site management or the contractor working on site? So obviously it depends where you are in the world, and there are going to be people joining us today that are from different parts of the world. In the UK, there's a concept of control. So it's who's in control of this location where this incident might occur, and they're the person who bears the main duty, but not the exclusive duty. So let's say you are I'll give you an example where the lines are a bit blurry. So let's say you're a cleaning contractor and you're cleaning a shopping centre. And it's a wet day. It's really, really chucking it down with rain outside, and somebody slips inside the door. Now, the question there is who's kind of in charge of that area. Now, on the one hand, you could say that cleaning contractors in charge because they're maintaining that area. But on the other hand, what asset are they trying to maintain? If the entrance has only a meter of matting and then a smooth, shiny marble floor that's really slippery when it's wet, then there's clearly some liability or duty there from the owner of that asset, the building manager as well. So it's all about this question of control, and that's where sometimes disagreements can come up. Thank you for all the comments. Thank you for all the comments. Okay. Questions there. Oh, thanks, Louise, Pearl, Ali, everyone, Simon, everyone that's watching on LinkedIn. Appreciate the support. Right, we're coming up to the hour, so I don't want to keep people too long. What to do next is to go and buy the book. Now, sadly, I've just checked and it's still not quite available on Amazon. Some gremlins must be working away, but it will be out on Amazon very, very soon. So what I'll do is I'll send out the link to everybody that attended today as soon as the book is available, and I'll post about it on social media as well. Frustratingly, not available as we speak, but if you're watching the replay of this, then it probably will be available by the time you're listening to this. It will be available. Just wanted to say before we wrap up that the next safety roundtable in 2 weeks' time is going to be one where I'll be joined by Carsten Bush. I'm really looking forward to this. We're going to be speaking about the worst things to say to a safety professional, and that's going to be a very interactive session. So do join us on the 2nd of October at 12:30 for that with Carsten, and come with some ideas on the worst things to say to a safety professional, and Carsten and I will try our best to deal with those and talk about some ways that you could try to manage those kinds of scenarios. So thank you very much for joining me. Thank you for being interested in the book. And I hope if you do buy the book that you enjoy it. And again, if you do buy it, make sure to, if you buy it on Kindle, make sure to post about it on social media and fill in that form, and I'll get you a paperback copy as well. I thought I'd finish just by giving you the ending of the book, basically. And this is what the ending of the book says. Your Slipology legacy starts now. Make it count. The world is waiting for the safer future you can create. Step forward boldly, armed with knowledge, driven by passion, and committed to making a difference. Your journey as a Slipology pioneer begins here, and the impact you'll make will resonate for years to come. The power to transform slip safety is in your hands. Use it wisely, use it well, and watch as you help create a safer world for all. You can stop slip accidents. Use the science. Thanks very much, everybody. Really appreciate you joining me today, and I hope that you enjoy the book as well. Thank you.